I'm a Latino guy who happens to be gay. So there's basically three parts of my personality that I bring to the table right off the bat. The more adversity and diversity that you bring to the table, the more you can see through the nuances of the way the world works and how you can translate that to really great journalism. And besides the hiring part, then you have to actually listen to them when you get them into your newsroom.
Once I got in, I made it a point to let everyone know that I was gay in the newsroom and in the TV stations or newspapers. The way that I let people know that I was gay was I didn't want to announce it because I didn't want to be the gay reporter, even though I'm a reporter who's gay. So what I would do is, I always did this the same way. I would look around and try to figure out who was the office gossip. And then I would tell him or her and let them do all my work for me. And it worked every time.
This is another industry that kind of holds those old school gender roles and standards where you look on the television, you see the classic woman, all prim and proper, looking great, sitting on the desk with the guy in the nice suit looking prim and proper and kind of giving that old school perception. So these are the things that all came to mind and it definitely made me struggle with how do I fit into this? How do I dress? How do I look? How do I identify? So it was extremely scary for me. So for probably a year and a half to 2 years, I went through my first job in TV news, keeping my, orientation to myself.
Starting out, my family is Jamaican, and I'm sure people have read or heard about just the kinds of things that are said by Jamaican families when it comes to homosexuality, even songs written about killing you if you are gay. So just in my own family dynamic, it was hard for me to be myself. So even starting out in news, you hear stories about people not advancing or people's careers stalling just because they're gay. So I had that fear starting out. So I was more to myself and more reserved, and I just did not want that to get out. So I felt like I had to be careful which friends I made and what kind of information I divulge to these friends, because you don't want rumors to start spreading. And, your first job, you're not making much money. So the goal is to always move up and do bigger and better. So that fear of not being able to do that because of who you are was just present.
Let me see how I can put this. It felt for me in my broadcast career that once management knew I was gay, I was always fighting the gravitas fight. I always wanted to make sure that they viewed me as authoritative and credible. I never spoke about being gay. And that held true with LGBTQ managers as well. And there was one very important political live shot that I was on, and it was continuous coverage. And I had a gay boss come into my ear and tell me to tone it down, that I was reading a little too excitable, I suppose. And that always stuck with me. And I don't know if someone called that manager and it was just being passed on, but here I am, a gay on-air person doing live shots on an important story, and a gay manager is calling me and telling me to tone it down.
I don't take lightly that we're showing people that you can come out, you can be successful in your dream career, you can have a really great, fulfilling life, you can marry the love of your life, and you can have that positive outcome you've always hoped for as a closeted queer individual as a kid. And that seeing that represented every day in front of the camera can speak volumes. And I don't take that responsibility lightly.
As somebody that came out during Stonewall and was a member of the early Gay Liberation Front and Gay Activist Alliance, and helped start Gay Youth, and had the first community center for trans youth at the time. It's an outrage that people still face discrimination.
So then AIDS came along. So there I was, an openly gay reporter who had learned his craft, covering AIDS at the beginning at ground zero of the epidemic. San Francisco had more cases than any spot in the Western world per capita. And so I was very, very fortunate. I know that's a strange word to use, but I was very fortunate to be in that position. Who better to cover AIDS than a gay man in San Francisco?
When we are telling you something is a big story, you please believe us that it's a story, and trust us that it's going to be something that's not just going to be beneficial to the community that we're trying to report on, but to the larger community as well.
Hello again, and welcome to our candid series, Diversity. Let's really talk about it. I'm Bob Rucker, chair of the Diversity Committee and a member of the Board of Governors for the San Francisco and Northern California chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. Our distinguished panel and I are here today to help broaden the Academy understanding of diversity inclusion that cannot always or easily be discerned just by looking at us or hearing us talk. We have control over our diversity reveal because the how, when, or if we do come out usually is a big decision. And many times it's heavily influenced by local, cultural, religious, even family norms and values, which vary in every community. So throughout broadcast history, this diversity identification had to be very cautious or just keep quiet to protect our career aspirations, not to mention our paychecks. So we've invited this incredibly talented group of diverse media professionals to talk about their personal experiences and offer insights on being part of the LGBTQIA plus community. Now, an overarching question for everyone who's listening. Have the times really changed enough for people in broadcasting on all levels to feel secure about being their authentic selves? Like with every other cultural group we brought in over this year, today we plan to openly explore the good, the bad, and some ugly challenges we've all faced in broadcasting, with the goal, going forward, of having overdue conversations begin between colleagues and managers. Now, previously, I've already talked about the fact that I'm a gay man, African American, and born on the south side of Chicago. While in Catholic grammar school, third grade, in fact, I first realized my orientation, like several others did as well. Later in high school, I saw many more just like me. But it would be something I heard my father tell some of his close buddies at a house party that would make me cautious for decades to come. He said, if my son were gay, I would kill him. So I waited until I was in my 40s and had proven myself in television before telling all of my family. And I even remember fondly one cousin just smiling and saying, duh, what took you so long? We knew. But in TV news, I never officially came out. And later in higher education, I was strongly advised by a faculty friend, wait until you get tenure to be safe. Despite all of that, I've had a most fulfilling broadcast news career, as well as one in college education, which continues to give me great joy. So on this celebration of Gay Pride Month, I am very proud to present a group of my heroes. On our panel today, I want you to know I just did my self-introduction. Very briefly now, we're going to go to each of you. And Hank Plante, I'm going to ask you to start because many of us believe you were the first in American local television news reporting to come out as gay.
Thank you, Bob. And Bob, thanks so much for all that you do for all of us. You're so highly respected in the news business and in academia. I was certainly one of the first. I was the first one that I knew of. It was a gift to be able to just be myself. And I think that it happened because I didn't care that much about what other people thought. I was too selfish to care what other people thought. So really quickly, I've spent my whole adult life in the news business, about half that time in newspapers, including the Washington Post. I've worked in 10 or 11 newsrooms. For the longest stretch, 25 years, it was at KPIX TV, the CBS station in San Francisco, as a reporter, anchor, and political reporter. I am now mostly retired, living in Palm Springs with my husband, and I'm glad to be with you today.
Hey, everybody. I'm Tony Russomanno. You asked me to go next, Bob, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Hank was one of the first people to greet me when I joined KPIX. I had been with KGO TV and got laid off there. Oh, actually, no, my ratty ass got fired. And like several hours later, I was literally hired by KPIX. And Hank came up to me and not in a whisper, but kind of a low voice said, hey, it's nice to have more of us here. It's nice to have more of us here. And I think I said, oh, thanks. But honest to God, what I was actually thinking was, what do you mean, like old white guys? Honestly, the idea of being gay in a newsroom didn't even occur to me, because my entire life and career, for me, it has never been an issue. Before Channel 5, the KPIX, I worked at KGO. Before that, I was in radio. I worked at KSFO, covered Guyana, and all this other nonsense. I owned a radio network. I worked for NBC News in New York, and joined them at a time right out of college when the issue was not being gay in the newsroom, but being a woman in a newsroom. This is when the FCC started, requiring reporting of minorities, and they talked about women. The idea of how many gays do you have working in the newsroom? Boom, their heads would explode. That was never even, that was beyond the realm of possibility. So a career goes back a long time. I'm happy to be retired, very comfortable, and living here in Santa Cruz.
I'm Drew Tuma. I'm a gay man. I'm a meteorologist at KGO TV, the ABC station in San Francisco. And Sergio Quintana, one of the people you will meet in 1 second, he was one of the first people I not only saw in the newsroom, but also became friends with very quickly. I think as queer people, we're really good at instantly going into a room and assessing the situation and seeing, who's our allies and, who is just like us in that newsroom. So seeing Sergio's, warm smile, it really made it a safer space to be in. But there are many people who I work with at KGO who identify as LGBTQIA+, and it's a wonderful place to work. I really couldn't ask for a better station. They're very welcoming to queer people. And we will be the proud sponsor of the Gay Pride Festival on the last Sunday in June. We will air it live on ABC7, which we're very proud of. So if you don't have a chance to be there in person, you can watch it live on TV, and we're very excited about that.
Sergio.
As Drew mentioned, and my name is Sergio Quintana. I used to work with Drew over at KGO. I was there for a few years. I have since jumped to NBC Bay Area News, which is often the case in this business. You jump from station to station. I think I've been out in my newsrooms. I certainly haven't been in, if you understand what I'm saying. I've never really kind of like pretended that I was anything other than who I am. There are a few newsrooms where it's been completely obvious. Like when I worked in North Carolina, I mean, my partner at the time would come in with our beagle and they got the idea. I've never really felt any kind of pressure to not be out. But I have certainly been conscious of the way I would present myself on camera. And it was because of a friend of mine that I met at an NHJ conference who told me this horror story of how one news director once told him during a live shot, Tom, you look a little slight, which I had no idea what that meant. But I kind of got the context. And ever since, and that was pretty early on in my career. So I was conscious of the way I would present myself on the news. I think I'm lucky. I work at NBC Bay Area News in also a very open and accepting newsroom. And I am the reporter assigned to covering San Francisco. I literally live overlooking Castro Theater, and every once in a while I get to do live shots off of my balcony because it's a great shot. And I'm very lucky. I know that there is adversity out there, and there are also things that I recognize that just because I'm in San Francisco, I'm not in a bubble. I'm not just reporting to my audience. What happens in San Francisco tends to go out elsewhere. And these days in Twitter, I'm also conscious of that. I do present news, and I try not to comment often, in part because I don't want to get pulled into, people commenting on my credibility over certain issues. But I'm very lucky. I know people like Drew, and I know people like his colleague Reggie, and I know people who I get to work with who are extremely talented and extremely sharp. And I'm very happy to be part of this panel today. Bob?
Oh, very good. Go ahead.
Looks like it's over to me. How are you, everybody? It's Will Thomas. I'm in Washington, D.C. Was with Fox 5 as a news anchor and reporter out here in Washington for just about 20 years. Before that, anchor reporter at KI42, your eye on Austin, and also KOAT, Action 7 News in Albuquerque. So those were my three big stations. I am gay. I came out both personally and professionally about 5 years into my job at Fox 5. And I retired from Fox 5 about 4 years ago. I'm now vice president with TTR Sotheby's International Realty, still telling stories, but doing it in a different way, and having a fantastic new chapter. And TV still in my future. In fact, I was just speaking to producers last week about a potential project. So I think that I will not be giving up broadcasting. And I wanted to say in that opening clip where I talked about the gay manager who called me and said, tone it down. That gay manager was also the smartest and best manager I ever worked for, and learned a lot from that person. So I wanted to say that, but I know in these little clips, sometimes it might sound like it was a negative experience with that person, but it really wasn't. And my hunch is, upon reflection, they may have been warning me about somebody higher up making that comment about toning it down. And I think one of the reasons I didn't come out, at least for 5 years, and I didn't really come out at work, it was leaked from a friend and sent me into a panic, was I was afraid. I had an agent at William Morris in New York who said, Will, and he still stands by this, if you think about main anchor newscasters in major markets, primary anchors, not the weekend person, not the morning person, but evening news anchor, there are maybe one or two, maybe three across America that identify as out and gay. It's changing a little bit, but I was talking to Bob in the setup interview that we did, and he said, I can't think of anybody as a primary anchor who's out and gay in the Bay Area, which is where I grew up, in the Almaden Valley of San Jose, and graduated from San Jose State University. Bob was a professor and a mentor of mine, but coming out at work, as I said, was leaked. And I remember confiding in a co-anchor that I was worried about management's reaction. And they said, Will, before you were hired, they called me in the office to look at your video, and they asked, does he come off too gay? So they knew it before I did. And fortunately, they hired me, and it was a great place to work for a long, long time. Len, I think we're tossing it to you, my friend.
Hello, everybody. My name is Len Kiese. I do mornings and the noon show at KPIX 5. Good to be here with all of you, especially a couple of former KPIXers. Good to meet some folks who paved the way for me being here as well. For me, it's been a funny path to being out. I've been in the business for about 16 years, and I worked 3 television jobs before I made the conscious decision to just be you, Len, just be you. So when I moved to Orlando, my previous job before here, I said, it's gonna be who I am. If people ask me a question, I'll answer it, no big deal. And that's been the best decision I think I've made in my life. And then coming to California, I feel even more free. This is such a welcoming environment. The station is so welcoming, and I just feel like a burden is off of my back. So
I'm happy to be here and have this conversation about and hear everybody else's stories as well.
Well, we're very happy to have all of you here. And thank you, Lynn. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our director for today's program, Steve Slisky. We're on StreamYard, and he is our past president of the Academy chapter here in San Francisco. He also oversees activities and programs for the Board of Governors. So thank you, Steve. We appreciate that. Now, there was another participant you saw in the open who could not be with us today for this discussion. Taylor Basaki is a very gifted communicator and multimedia reporter for KRON in San Francisco. She agreed to record some extra insights to share with us so we could drop them in throughout our program today. Recently, I asked her about growing up and realizing when she was a child, what did it mean to be lesbian? And Taylor talks about working through that over time with her support system, the people she loves, her family.
Growing up, it was something I definitely always knew, always thought about, but never quite felt comfortable in my own skin, kind of try to push it down, just because looking around me, I didn't see anyone that identified the same way that I did. I didn't know of anyone that identified the same way I did. So it kind of made me question, how do I fit into this? If I come out, will this impact how I come across, how I'm treated, how I'm paid? I mean, we know already in general that women, there is a disparity, a pay disparity there. So I'm like, well, now what if I add another layer?
And in terms of the balance, you're trying to make it in a career. Our support system is our family. How did they find out? How did you tell them that you were lesbian?
Oh, that was a fun one. Yeah, I told them when I came out, my senior year of college, because I am very close with my family. They are 100% supportive now. Not that they weren't then, but I think it more so came as a shock because I was in a I was doing what society told me to do as I grew up. I was in a hetero relationship and things just always didn't make sense for me. I just never felt fully in it. And I kind of had to confide in my family eventually because I felt like I'm living this secret and I'm very close with my family. So when I first told them, it definitely came as like a sticker shock. Took them some time to process. And it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't easy at first. But the conversation did come up like, well, what are you going to do? Or what are you going to say when you go into your first job? They had concerns for me as well.
You get a sense of what I had the pleasure of getting to know about Taylor, and I want to thank her for being a part of this. Let me talk to the rest of the group now and ask you to individually talk about this concept. We all have a passion for doing journalism. I know I did, I know you do. But what was it like with this, I like to call the invisible, diversity that we have? How did you deal with it as a child and a little bit about your support system? And I want to go back to Tony Russomanno, because Tony, you had the wonderful opportunity in life to be in New York during Stonewall in 1969. Tony, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like for you at the beginning?
Well, I came out during Stonewall. I wasn't at the Stonewall bar during the riots. My God, people were getting beat up. I didn't want to go anywhere near there. But I was in New York at the time, living in New York, student at NYU. And soon after Stonewall, I realized that I was gay. It wasn't Stonewall necessarily that made me realize that. It was actually watching a movie called The Producers with Zero Mostel. White is the color of our carpet. Then, something rings a bell there. So I joined the first the first gay liberation group, the Gay Liberation Front, and was one of the very few people there that was still a teenager. One of the other people was a guy named Mark Siegel, and he was my age. And we got together, became partners. Mark decided that it would be good to start a group for teens, for younger people. So he started Gay Youth, and he is still a gay activist. He's also the publisher of the Philadelphia Gay News, one of the most highly respected newspapers of any kind, gay, straight, bi, whatever, in Pennsylvania, based in Philadelphia. So, Mark and I had a great time together. He would come to my house and meet my mom. This was in New Jersey. My family lived in New Jersey. And, everything was together. My mom loved Mark, and on and on and on. And one day she was watching TV in the kitchen, and I happened to be at that house. And she said, "Oh, come quick. Your friend Mark is on TV." I go in the kitchen, and there's Mark. He had just stormed into the Merv Griffith show, and was holding gay activist. He was holding up some kind of sign about gays demand representation, something or else. And Merv invited him to sit in and talk to him about gay rights. And my mom was watching, just closely, attentively. And I said, "Oh, look," he said, "oh, he looks good. He looks really good. Oh, yeah, that's nice." And that was as far as any awareness went. An Italian-American family, it was like, there's a reason they call them private parts. It's none of your goddamn business, basically. And that was my family's attitude about everything personal for everyone. So, it's like they know, but they don't know, they know, but they're not going to talk about it as long as you're happy. That was what I heard over and over again. And yes, I was happy.
That was a beautiful story. And I thank you for that. Sergio, that reminded me of what you told me about your family growing up in New Mexico. Why don't you tell that very, very briefly?
It's interesting. Trying to remember the first moments where you realized that you were different. I think my mom kind of knew pretty early on. The first record I ever bought was Dancing Queen. And I also loved Crystal Gale because her hair was fabulous. And my mom just knew. And when she's the first person I accidentally told when I was 15 years old, I had this massive crush on this guy who was a year older than me. His name was Derek. He was one of these straight guys who was constantly like violating my personal space in the best possible way, wrestling with me and that kind of roughhousing that the young teen guys do. And we went to a dance, and I had my mom's car, and he and I went driving, and like we told each other our life stories, and it was wonderful. And it was just completely cheesy, pure, like innocence. And I would always go to lunch with my mom. So the next day I went to lunch with my mom, and she, we go through lunch, and towards the end, she asks, "By the way, how did last night go?" And I was telling her about hanging around with Derek and how great he is and what a cool guy he is. And the more and more I started talking, I burst into tears. And my mom, sitting at her desk, she just kind of like, she gets up and she comes over and she gives me a hug and she says, "Oh, mijito, I love you no matter what you are. Now pull yourself together because you have to go to choir." I mean, knowing that my mom knew and she always had my back and was always encouraging me to do what I wanted to do, has been very powerful for me throughout my life. And it's also one of the reasons why I got into the news business, in part because I liked the news. I just was a news junkie. But also being on television was this affirmation, not just for me, but for my mom, that I was doing well, and that I was doing. I was just doing well, and that was very important for the impression to have on my mom, and also to give my mom some bragging rights every once in a while.
And you told me that your mother still watches you now online just to make sure you're still doing well. That's good, Mom. Very good. That was a great story. Lynn, let me go to you for a second. You heard my story about what my dad said, and then you talked about in the open about the music and the culture. What were the pressures you were under when you were growing up?
Yeah, kind of the same story that you gave. And as I mentioned, just growing up in a Jamaican household, on both sides, I mean, that's all you hear is, there's a song called Boom Bye Bye, which is literally saying, let's kill all the gay people in town. And so, and your family members, they're blasting that song on the stereo, and it's kind of just like, wow, okay, I better not say a thing. And that's just what always lived with me for the longest time, personally at home, and then out in the world too. That kind of goes along with you there too. So it was just a long time before I felt comfortable telling any family members. The first person I did tell was my mother, when I was well into my first TV job. That's when I finally had, it was at Applebee's, and we sat down at the table, and I just, I told her. And surprisingly, I know they say everybody says that your mom always knows, but I think I worked hard for her not to know, with dating girls and not saying certain things and not introducing her to certain friends. So I worked hard at that. So for her to be accepting, even though she did not know that about me, just changed the world. Once I knew she accepted me for who I was, at that point I knew I could tell anybody and not care about their reaction.
Very beautiful. Very nice story. And I'm so glad that you had that experience with your mom. Let me go to one of my other heroes here, Tuma. Two compliments for you, sir. One, I tried doing weather way back when in Iowa. God bless you, brother. I'm never doing it again. Okay? It's not that easy. But more importantly, I really like the fact that when you and I talked recently, you're very confident. You're very open. You're very much yourself, and you don't really worry about what anybody else thinks. That's something we admire.
I mean, yeah, you're coming into like chapter like 39 of my life where, you know, I am confident. But back to the weather, if you can just point to the right and say cooler by the coast, you're gonna be just fine. I guess, you know, I was always aware that I was gay ever since I can remember. Kind of like Sergio, you know, I loved on like Saturday mornings watching American Gladiators for many reasons that I couldn't describe at that time, being like a 5-year-old, but I was like enthralled with all those like muscle guys. And I was like, this is great. And I loved all the pop divas of the day, you know, the Britney Spears and the Jessica Simpsons and all that. And my mom took me to all these concerts. And I think my parents obviously, I think, knew before I did who I was. And I think that it was a really, you know, I had a really great childhood. They fostered a lot of love in that household. And I think the way that I try to, you know, stop anybody from figuring anything out when I was young is I would just, you know, devote myself to my schoolwork. And my parents were really sweet when people were like, why isn't he dating anybody? You know, why does he have a girlfriend? And my parents were like, oh, he's too busy with school. You know, he's focused on school. And I remember them saying that. I remember them, you know, kind of coming to my defense when, you know, I was still not telling anybody yet that I was gay. But I think it's my childhood, you know, my parents being by my side, you know, early on, knowing who I was, but waiting for me to figure out who I was and coming out to them. And then it was really college where I flourished. And I really became, you know, the more confident gay man I was. But even in my first TV job, I still waited close to a year to really tell anybody, because I started, like many of us probably did, in a really small market. It was in Virginia. Beautiful place, the Shenandoah Valley, but you know, it's, you know, you still don't, it's not like San Francisco in many respects. And you just go there, you want people to like you for other things first. You want people to like you because you're intelligent. You want people to like you because you're smart. You want people to like you for all these other things. And then I think, I forget who said it, but I too found The Office gossiper in it. And I guess not all gossip is bad gossip, because I told that person and then it, you know, spread like wildfire. And that was an easy way for me to let everybody know who I truly was. Was I ever fearful that it would stop me from progressing in this career? I think a little bit, but at that point in my life, I just thought I value my life that I have a little bit more than the job. And if I'm very much a person who is of trust the process, and you know, kind of what meant to be is going to happen. And that's kind of led me well in my life. So you see me now, you know, 33 years later with this confidence, but it's not always like that. It's I mean, it's really hard to describe that feeling when you're just trying to figure out what you are and how you fit in when you're young, because you don't really see people represented like you. I mean, when I was growing up, any storyline that was queer, it either didn't really have a positive outcome. It was probably a dark storyline. You know, if they did come out, that was it. You really never saw what happened after they came out. So you really never saw people living these great, positive, queer lives. So I think it's gotten better for sure. I mean, hello, examples right here. There's 7 of us that are living amazing lives. But yeah, that was kind of my process. I just say trust the process and come out whenever you feel like coming out. There's no good time. There's no perfect time to come out. You can come out when you're young, when you're old. It's everybody feels different about it. And just trust your gut. It's always taught me well.
Very good. And I understand you used to work with one of our other panelists, Will Thomas, who just happened to have been one of my students.
Hey, Will.
I had no clue that you were gay when you were a student.
Well, I'm not sure that I was fully wrapped around that concept either. But I want to just say something about Drew. I think you were freelancing at Fox 5, right? For a while, hanging out with Sue.
That is right.
Yeah, you know, it was really exciting to see someone your age. You know, I think you just said you're 33. So that means when you were in our newsroom, you were in your 20s, right? 20.
Yeah, I think I was 24 in your newsroom.
Yeah. So I think I said this to Bob when we spoke a few days ago. You know, I think those of us who are in broadcasting and news managers and people who work on and off the air, you know, Drew has that it factor, right? He's good looking, great personality, he's young, and he's gay, and he's not about to let it get in the way. And I love that about you, that you moved through the newsroom, you were popular, I could tell people liked you, and I just saw star written all over you. So it's exciting to see you having success in San Francisco and now I believe married. And I'm just so happy for you, because not to be Debbie Downer here, but for I think a lot of people who are a generation ahead of you, like myself, that was not our experience. For some it was, and I felt like when I was strictly reporting 5 days a week or 3 days a week and weekend anchor, I kind of felt like I was under the radar enough that I wasn't scrutinized as much. And then once I started filling in on the evening shows, or I got that first weekday evening show, it felt there was more pressure. Would I connect with the audiences, that kind of thing? And I have heard it from colleagues all across the country that it has been tricky to navigate. So kudos to Drew, the new generation that's just kicking ass, and I'm really proud of you.
So am I, very much so.
Thank you. Also, I do have to give a shout out. Sergio is part of the reason I met my husband. It was one night. It was one night after work. You know, we worked late. We were both working late shift one night. It was a Monday night, and he's like, "Do you want to go get a drink?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's Monday." He's like, "Come on." I'm like, "All right, I'll go out, only if I can go to like a bar close to my house so I can just go home." And we went to a bar, and on a Monday night, I think there were like 7 people in that bar, Sergio. And one of them was, you know, my future husband, Joey. And so I got to give a shout out to Sergio for making me go out that night.
Very good. It's always good to give shout outs. I think that's a wonderful thing. I want to give one to Hank. Hank, I used to be envious of you because you had this command of politics in San Francisco, and you had this connection with the gay community. During the AIDS epidemic, you and Dr. Fauci got to be able to communicate on such a wonderful level. What was it like for you personally, though, being gay?
It was difficult. I think it's hard for all of us. My first job out of college, stroke of luck, I got hired as a copy boy at the Washington Post, and fell in love with the news business. But you know, I'm going back, I hate to tell you, 50 years. And you know, it's a straight white male business. It was a very macho business. There were snide gay remarks in the newsroom, gay jokes. The lesbians and gays who were working there were closeted. So, you know, the signals were don't come out. But, you know, like I said, I guess I just was too selfish to care too much about what people thought about me. One thing I learned from that experience was that there were very there were a lot of eccentric people working in the newsroom, how newsrooms are. And what I noticed was that, I mean, there were drunks, there were people with just, anger issues, you name it. But their work protected them. And I think one of the things I learned at some level was that I can be whoever I was as long as I did good work. And I found that to be true. My work protects me. I've worked for a lot of people who didn't like the fact that I was gay, including in San Francisco. But I always did good work and never feared for my job. And so I don't know, that was just one of the things that happened. So, yeah.
And I'm going to go to another comment from Taylor in just a moment. But Hank, I want to stay with you because you were telling me about a story with a news director in San Francisco where everybody's supposedly open-minded and definitely respectful of each other's culture. And yet you had a unique experience.
And this wasn't that long ago. Tony knows who this person was. This was it was an assistant news director who then was the acting news director because we were between news directors. I was anchoring the news. I was the main anchor. I was anchoring the news, and I had to do a live interview with another CBS reporter from LA. This guy was an idiot. He was a consumer reporter. And it was during a gas crisis. And his brilliant idea was everybody should not buy gas on Tuesday. And before we went on the air that night, the assistant news director, the acting news director said to me, the person who runs CBS loves this guy, so go gentle on him. So anyway, I'm doing this interview live during the 6 o'clock news. And this the consumer reporter floats his idea, which is everybody should not buy gas on Tuesday. I asked the obvious question, which is, yeah, but then we're all going to buy it on Wednesday. How does that hurt the oil companies? The guy didn't have an answer. Strange. So we finished the interview. It was very nice, polite interview. I got off the set and I was called into the acting news director's office with the producer, who Tony also knew. And this news director said to me, I thought that I told you to take it easy on this guy. And I said, well, how could I not ask that question? If you don't buy gas on Tuesday, you're going to have to buy it on Wednesday. And the guy said to me, well, Hank, maybe I just should have told you to suck him off. True. So I ended the conversation and went out, got something to eat. I did do the 11. I thought about going home. I did the 11. And then the next morning I called my agent who was at William Morris, and he kind of guided me through how to handle it. I wrote a note to the general manager of the station saying, come on, I'm a gay reporter in San Francisco and somebody says like this. And the general manager at the time, he kind of blew it. All he said to me was, well, are you going to file some kind of a complaint? Federal complaint? And I said, I don't know. And so that general manager did nothing about it. The best advice, I got advice from the agent, which was, look, let it go. You want to have a bright career. You want to have a long career. Let it go. And so I did let it go. I always wonder if that was the right decision. I think if I had made a big deal out of it, and it would have been a big deal, it would have ended my career, I think. I might have gotten a lot of money, but I just wanted to be a reporter and an anchor. And so I just let it go. That news director got fired eventually, something else. But anyway, that's the story.
That's
if it was the assistant news director, I think it was the same person who, when I finally shaved my mustache, my 80s porn stash, he took one look at me and he threatened to invoke the facial disfigurement clause in my contract.
Oh, nice.
They actually had that in your contract?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask you, Tony, do you remember that era like Hank does, that people would say those kind of crass things to you?
No, because I had the great pleasure and good fortune of working for a couple of San Francisco TV stations, but never having to go to San Francisco. I covered, my beat was technology and later the environment and back to technology again. So I had an office in San Jose and I loved working in San Jose. You know, the reporters in San Francisco they thought I was nuts. My gosh, we got a San Francisco station. You don't want to live in the big city here. Now, sorry, did that already. Did that. Worked for NBC New York. Thank you. Had my big city. And they didn't understand it. Finally, I said, look, here's why I love working in San Jose. Plenty of free parking. So that they understood. So I would only be in San Francisco rarely. I only went because I was given advice once by another reporter from Channel 7, Rigo Chacon, who told me, don't just be the face on the screen. Make yourself a person in the newsroom. Maybe once every 6 months, find a reason to go to San Francisco. So I did, and never after I had a bad story. No, it's only after having the lead story. The next day, I'd find a reason to go to San Francisco. So, timing is everything.
Timing is always everything. I want to ask any of the other members, have you ever had anyone say something to you that made your jaw drop or just want to go up to HR or any problems like that?
I
Yes.
have, not because of being gay. I mean, for other reasons. I mean, I remember being told once that I wasn't going to get the job because they already had a brown person in that newsroom. But I mean, which is weird. That was a news manager who said that. I have seen people be treated certain ways because of the way they were perceived, because of their sexuality perceived, and I was just someone who I always made myself available to talk. Like, hey, you need to use me as a sounding board. Like, let's chat about how things are going, because the unfortunate part about this business is that at a certain level, you become very good at what you do. I love what I do, and I try to do a good job constantly. But and I've told this to younger journalists, probably like in their second or third jobs. 30% of what you do is the actual work, and the rest is office politics. And you have to figure out how you're going to weave through that office politics. Like he said, showing up and making sure that you're seen after a really good story. That's part of making sure that you're going to work the currents of the way each newsroom works. Mm-hmm. If you're savvy enough, you're successful enough to stay. And of course, the reward for good work is more work.
Absolutely. Will, you look like you were going to say something.
Well, I mean, I have a list too long to share of things that occurred. But, to Hank's point, you make a decision. If I complain or say something, could this be a career ender? And so you now have to pick your battles. And so my feeling, and this is really something that I got from you, Bob, as a professor, which is, work hard, don't complain, and be likable. And that's really how I conducted myself my entire broadcast career. Is I didn't want to have a problem. So in the first 6 months of my job here in DC, we had mailboxes, and someone had stuffed gay porn in my box. I mean, that was like, welcome to Washington. But when I came to DC in '97, it was at a time where major market stations were hiring younger people who were walking and talking and bringing more energy to the broadcast. And that didn't go over well with everybody. There was a transition. Now it's commonplace, right? And so I get that I may have had a target on my back. So it may have been just the easy thing to do, which to call me gay. But throughout my career, there have been many, many instances that I have faced. And my feeling is you just have to push through it. And that was my feeling was the way that I help the next generations of Drews and Sergios is shut up and just keep climbing the ladder. And little by little, we will make our strides. And I did. And I became a weekday evening anchor at a major market and went about as high as I could go, which was exciting. But I will say, even at the very end, and this has nothing to do with management, but when you are gay, you are on the news, you are often fighting stereotypes. And you know, even a station who says, yes, we do hire gay people, but you have to equally consider gay people on and off air who may be perceived gay. So it's one thing to hire someone who doesn't read gay to the general public or to management necessarily, even though they may know it. And what I found is it was sort of 50-50 for me. And I think there was some concern with some management over the years that would I not connect as well with audiences if I was perceived as gay. My feeling was I just kept working hard. I just tried to be better. And that got me far. But at the very end, I was promoted to an evening show. My first week, the sports guy, who was a friend, we were at the end of the show. They were counting us down, half-hour show. Maybe it was 5 o'clock news. And he couldn't pronounce the last name of a player that he was reporting on. And they were 5, 4, and then it had to cut to me to say, goodbye, we'll see you at 10. And he just couldn't get it out. And I said, that's okay. So-and-so, that was a tough one. And, you know, we'll see you tonight at 10. And we went down into the newsroom, and we were in this sort of outside the staircase where not everyone could see. And he started to yell at me, and he thought I was making fun of him. And he grabbed me by the shirt and started shaking me and was ready to hit me. And I just remained calm, and a technician saw it, and she started to say, stop, stop. And I was told him to stop. And I said, let's get into the makeup room. And I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible to calm him down. He later apologized, but I didn't want to be, oh, great, we promoted the gay guy and now he's going at it with the sports guy. Had I said something to management, and even people who worked with that sports person thought I should, if I had, it would have changed his life. He probably would have lost his job, and I don't know if he could have gotten employment somewhere else. But I wanted to get along. I didn't want to be the squeaky wheel. And I hope that story emphasizes that point, that even as bad as that was, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to be the problem child. I just wanted to exceed expectations, keep my nose clean, my head down, and do my job.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I'm sorry you had to go through that, all of you.
I would have kicked his ass, by the way.
I have no doubt. Let me just tell you this in larger perspective. We have a large number of smaller market people in our academy in this region who are looking to be in San Francisco someday, because if you're LGBTQIA, you're thinking, okay, I get there, I don't have to worry about this stuff anymore. And yet we just heard stories from Washington, D.C. and in San Francisco that apparently challenges happen on all levels, and trying to figure out how to deal with it on the smaller market level, that's a big challenge for some of our people. I want to bring in Taylor's comment. I keep hearing from the Academy members that most people think coming to San Francisco is probably easier in terms of being gay than working in other cities. Taylor Basaki had some thoughts on that, and also she offers some ideas on resources now available online to help guide us through those conversations we may need to have.
Again, it might be different in a smaller market. Actually, since coming out and over the years, I have found incredible resources within the journalism community. There's actually a Facebook group for LGBTQ reporters, and I never knew that existed until probably about a year ago. And the type of discussions of how to present things. And I see these people concerned about what their news directors are saying. And their news directors will sometimes actually give them pushback on stories that are a no-brainer of why we would need to cover them and their impacts to the community. And some of them are dealing with much more challenging issues of getting through to some of the higher ups. And it's interesting to see those discussions play out because, you know, I am thankful to now be in a position where I have a newsroom that's open to hearing my voice and my ideas and why this is important. But not everybody has that luxury, unfortunately.
She worked in Florida, and I know many of you worked all around the country. Lynn, let me bring you back in the conversation and ask you, I know what we were up against when we were going through it. This younger generation, the resources to tell a gay story without being labeled a gay reporter. Can you say something about that to our younger members?
Yeah, the main thing I would say is to not be afraid to bring those issues to the forefront or those stories to the forefront that you think are important to the community. I mean, I know we've had issues in the past, but I feel like we've kind of turned the corner now on having more progressive management and more understanding management to look at the bigger picture and be able to see what the issues are and why they're important to cover. And I feel like this younger generation with the TikTok and Instagram and this and that, they really have their fingertips on so many things and so many issues out there that they are the ones to bring these issues up. And I say, do not be afraid to fight for those stories.
Very well said. That reminds me back to Mr. Tuma. You were telling me when we talked earlier, you got to muster the courage. You got to walk down that corridor sometime, but you got to go in there and talk to that general manager. How do you do that?
I mean, it's never easy. Why do they always put general managers like down this long hallway? It always stresses me out. Okay, I would say going back to some journalists who are in smaller markets and they're wondering how do I get these stories across. You really just have to put your best argument forward and realize that sometimes it's not going to happen your way, and that's. I face things like that in my life where you really fight for something and it's just, that's not the story you're going to be told that day. And I like what Will said is that what I would do and what I have done early on in my career, I mean, I'm still early in this career. I've only been in this career for 12 years, but when I was, my first market, I just really wanted my work to speak for me and for people to want to work with me because of my work ethic. And I would just say to those younger journalists, just keep doing the best work you possibly can. And just know that, sometimes not every story that you want to cover, and maybe it's, something that an LGBTQIA plus issue, at the end of the day, your manager may have a different opinion and they're not going to let it air. And you kind of just have to accept that for what it is, and whichever story you get assigned to, make it the best story you possibly can, because then you're going to go to your next market, and maybe that next market is a more welcoming market for those issues, and you're prepared to tell those stories. And there are newsrooms that want those stories to be told, and they want your voice. And sure, San Francisco is certainly one of them. There are certainly other markets that are yearning for those voices, especially in the last 5 years. I mean, we are always looking for diverse opinions, especially when it comes to any story we cover here in the Bay Area. I know when we have certainly an issue that is the forefront of a lot of people's minds, the first thing our managers have told us is it's okay to ask questions. People in the newsroom, we don't all know everything about everybody. Everybody's personal experience is extremely different. And maybe you didn't live that experience, but someone else in that newsroom did. It's okay to ask questions about that person's experience. It's not weird if someone comes up to me and asks me a question about, an issue related to queer people. It's maybe because they didn't live that life and they're just wanting to know more. So I would say make your work speak for you, and just know that sometimes that's just not the way it's going to go. You're not going to get to maybe do that story you really want to do.
Very well said. Go ahead, Sergio.
That you are gay does not necessarily give you special license to tell these stories. And so being able to come up with these story ideas sometimes means that another reporter may do it. But because you are gay, you can tell that story likely with a whole lot more context and texture. It's just going to be a more rich and rounded out story, hopefully, given your skill set. Also, just because you pitch it and it doesn't turn up on your evening news or on your evening broadcast or on, the newspaper that you're going to be working for or whatever, we all have Twitter feeds. We all have social media feeds that we're the editor for. And so sometimes these stories need to be told and seeded to be told later. So you can certainly start the reporting now. And it's going to take extra work. You're going to probably be balancing the story you're going to have to be doing on the air that night, as well as these stories that you feel are important to be telling on a Twitter feed that's hopefully going to be rounded out. And you could probably even take that idea to your digital team and see if it can have life on a digital platform instead first. So, just don't take no. You don't take no and then pick up your clothes. I mean, your suitcases and leave. You have to keep pushing at these stories. If they are important, you're the storyteller who needs to figure out how to get them out. And yeah, it's true. You may not get to tell it the way you want to. And to that, I would say also remember that you are, it is the people whose stories you're helping tell, right? You are a facilitator of the news. And make sure that if their story is really good and compelling, you may need to hand it off to someone else because you're going to be assigned to covering the crash that day. That's just the way it goes sometimes, and that's okay. That happens.
Yeah, there's always a side door. Find that side door.
Yeah, I just want to say, I always felt extra pressure covering stories that affect the LGBTQ community because I was openly gay. I mean, we're supposed to be fair with every story. I think with those stories, I had to be extra fair and really go out of my way to get the other side in. I covered the gay marriage story from beginning to end because it was a San Francisco case, and the state Supreme Court's based in San Francisco. I really had to work very, very hard to get the right wing in. I felt a special obligation to that. So I don't just throw that out.
No, it's very good to bring that up.
Yeah, Hank, I just have to say, working with Hank, no one has ever questioned your capability to cover a story well because you get as many sides as there are to the story, not just both sides, but whoever's got something significant to say, you include them. And I don't think it has anything to do with you being, a gay reporter and being maybe in your own head you think, oh, I have to go out of my way to do this. I think it's just being a good reporter, that you have credibility and your reporting has been credible no matter what kind of story you were covering. So that goes to what younger people in the business should know. You have to make them respect you. Make them respect you for being a great reporter. That's how it works.
Developing those skills, being a solid journalist gives you the gravitas, but also I love what Sergio said about using the other platforms to get the message out in different ways. Be inventive, be creative. I want to go to another video and get the reaction of all of you on something that I just saw on national TV just a short time ago, about a week before we recorded this session. ABC News highlighted the skills of an openly gay high school graduating senior who was warned not to talk at their graduation ceremony about a new and controversial law called Don't Say Gay in Florida. Now, a member of our community shared his story on national news. Take a look.
This morning, a bittersweet moment for this Florida high school graduating senior. 18-year-old Xander Moritz, the first openly gay class president at Pineview School, says he was forced to censor his words during his commencement speech.
That is why I must discuss a very public part of my identity. This characteristic has probably become the first thing you think of when you think of me as a human being. As you know, I have curly hair.
Xander referencing his curly hair as a euphemism for his sexual orientation. As a plaintiff in the lawsuit against Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay law, Xander sharing what he says is at stake.
There are going to be so many kids with curly hair who need a community like Pineview, and they will not have one. Instead, they'll try to fix themselves so that they can exist in Florida's humid climate.
Just weeks ago, Xander writing on Twitter, "My principal called me into his office and informed me that if my graduation speech referenced my activism or role as a plaintiff in the lawsuit, school administration had a signal to cut off my microphone." The school, who signed off on the final speech prior to the ceremony, responding in a statement. Students are reminded that a graduation should not be a platform for personal political statements. Should a student vary from this expectation during the graduation, it may be necessary to take appropriate action.
It was a really dehumanizing decision because I had to take something I had written and was really proud of that just discussed my identity and my human rights, and I had to find a way to be clever to discuss who I was. I knew that going into this, I was not going to risk a platform, because that's going to exist less and less for LGBTQ plus students in Florida, and B, I wasn't going to risk a celebration that hundreds of my friends have spent 4 years working for. And so because the district affirmed that they supported action if I brought up the lawsuit or the advocacy around it, I knew that the threat to cut the mic was very real. So I wasn't going to let that happen, and I just had to be clever about it. But I shouldn't have had to be, because I don't exist in a euphemism and I deserve to be celebrated as is.
A beautiful story by Robin Roberts from ABC News. What's your reaction, panel, to that story?
Well, I'll jump in, Bob, and say that I think they ended up doing him a favor. He may not have made it onto Good Morning America without the controversy. So I think the school miscalculated, the administrators miscalculated, and I think his platform grew as a result. So good for Xander.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Lynn, you wanted to say?
Yeah, same thing. Shout out to Xander for just being able to go up there and speak his truth in a creative way. And just looking at him at such a young age, I really wish I had those kind of balls and that backbone when I was his age to take a stand like that, for sure.
There you go. Sergio?
What he displays is the creativity that we probably have to create because of who we are, because of a lifetime, or at least a good chunk of our life, trying to like in two different worlds. And as far as journalists go, use those tools that have been forced upon us to sharpen and to hone, to be able to tell good stories. And yes, clever is one of my favorite ways of telling stories and being able to get a message across, and kudos to him for being able to show us how to do it.
I figured a lot of people would probably see that.
Yeah.
A month ago, we did something where the Asian American community given really a reporter the strength to talk about the hate crime issues, and she took it and ran with it. And we heard in that panel discussion, well, you get pushback because that's activism on the part of the journalists. They shouldn't be doing that. What about here with LGBTQ? Go ahead.
Can't go, unnoticed that, Robin Roberts, an Al proud woman, not only conducted that interview, but she is, the main anchor on Good Morning America, which is a huge morning show. So that's, amazing representation right there. But going back to when we talked about how do you get stories, you find that side door, this young man was told no, but again, being who we are, we're clever people. We're used to being told no in many facets of our life. So we find that other way around. But I think it's just a part of the bigger issue where people, when gay marriage was passed, it was like, we did it. And I was like, oh no, we have a lot more to go. We still need more representation than we have right now. And I think that, for us, the ones, who get up and, do our job, I think that matters to people, just seeing, queer people on TV, living their lives. But again, it's the next generation. Like, I'm benefiting from, folks on this panel right now, their generation, they open a lot of doors, they kick some doors open. And, I feel like it's our responsibility as a next generation to keep those doors open for the next generation that, hopefully it seems that generation after me, I'm a millennial, by the way, which we get a lot of crap for sometimes, but I think the next generation, hopefully it appears that they're even more accepting than my generation. So I just feel that seeing these things on, a bigger national platform opens more people's eyes that, like, we're not, the fight is not over. I don't know that the fight will ever be over. Being other, it's hard to explain being other to someone who isn't. But seeing these things hopefully will open people's eyes that, like, it's not
it's not over. I don't know when it will be over or if it even will be over, but we're just hoping to make it easier for that next generation that, some of the things that we've gone through, some of the horror stories that people have told on this panel already, hopefully don't happen to that generation.
No, I appreciate what you just said. But you've also reminded me that I had a news director once who basically said, the gay community exists, we know it, but that's in other places. We're in a smaller market and we don't know if that would work well here, and we're trying to get ratings up. And in this day and age, I wonder if news directors and people who make decisions basically talk themselves out of letting stories being covered. What do you think?
Constantly. Yes. Yeah. News directors constantly will talk themselves out. Listen, I mean, if good news directors recognize that they have a pretty big blind spot, and that blind spot is all the things that they have not experienced in their life. And our job, if we come to the job with a certain point of view and a certain perspective on the world, we first have to have them trust us. And then we have to be able to advocate for these other points of view that they are not seeing because they've got blinders. Everyone does. We all have to. It's the way you get through life. In a newsroom, you can't really afford to allow people to walk around with blinders on because we have to tell broad stories of the broad communities that we cover. And in small towns, you never know what the gay story is going to be. There is this fantastic guy that I follow on social media only because I saw him on some HBO show. He is the mayor of a border town in Texas. He is an openly gay mayor of this small border town in Texas. And I remember seeing him doing an interview when there was an immigration crisis going on. There were a bunch of migrants were trying to come in. And I saw his interview, and of course my gaydar went off, and I was like, yeah, that guy, I know that guy. And then he popped up on HBO on this special where he's like doing drag with this troop of people coming through. Is that a gay story? Likely. And did I know that this guy was the mayor of, I mean, I kind of did, but gay stories are everywhere because we are everywhere. And, you just have to be able to understand what the news of the day is going to be and put it into that proper context. I think too that one of the things that we have to be careful about is minding our blind side, right? Like Hank Plante mentioned this a little bit earlier about making sure that he went the extra mile to make sure that his stories were balanced and were filled out completely. I have to admit, sometimes I like I mentioned earlier, I cover San Francisco. I live in Castro. Sometimes in doing stories, I'm presenting the story, and I have to sometimes stop for like 2 minutes and think, okay, who can I get to try to round this out? Because these are the voices that I have, and this is a legitimate story, but I need to be able to present another perspective just to round it out further. It's mentioned, I'm Latino, I'm gay. Sometimes in covering those stories, I have to make a conscious effort to get not opposing view, but a different view, just to make sure that it's fair.
And you mentioned Hank. Hank, I'm going to ask you, you covered the gay community beautifully, but did you ever get criticized by the gay community?
Oh, God, all the time. Yeah, I was doing look, you wind up doing stories that are critical. I mean, when ACT UP blocked the Golden Gate Bridge or when they shut down the opera, I did stories that wound up being critical because the feeling in the widespread community was, what are they, we're not the enemy. People on the Golden Gate Bridge are probably supportive of the gay community because they're living in the Bay Area. Yeah, all the time. I will say that I got a lot of really good stories just by being gay. And I'll bet the rest of you found this too. I mean, people would call me up. People I didn't know would call me up who worked in, a city hall or the state capitol or for some big corporation. And they liked that I was gay and they identified with the fact that I was gay. And they would tell me great stuff that was going on. Yeah, it certainly worked to my favor.
Yeah, sometimes it does. And Taylor's not here, but I will tell you something else she told me. She's seeing the day because she's really into the new technology, the multi-platform approach. And so I just put this out there. I said, let me just extrapolate a thought. What if the station came to you and said, okay, we're going to put you on the anchor desk. You've got the skills, the abilities, you're openly gay. Let's promote you as the openly gay anchor in the Bay Area. How would that go across? Lynn Kiese, I'm looking at your face. If KPIX came to you and said that to you, wouldn't you be a little uncomfortable?
Yeah, when you mentioned that just now, I rolled my eyes because I feel like you don't need a title like that. You are who you are. You're not going to promote me as the black anchor. So why would you promote me as the openly gay anchor? You're just an anchor. You're a man or you're a woman. I don't think you need that title, and I think it's offensive.
The right question to ask in a situation like that is, how much will you pay me?
Listen, guys, we all know there are ways around that. And the way they do it is they feature the straight co-anchor and his or her straight, spouse and the kids, and then they cut to the gay anchor and maybe show the same sex spouse. So you can do it, and they do it with people of color and people of different ages, but they have to sort of do it across the board, and that's how they get it in those promos. They're slick, you know that.
Very slick. But are we shy about it, or do we really think, no, that's going too far?
Well,
I don't know if we're shy about it. I can't imagine a general manager or a PR department at a station wanting it. Sorry. I mean, maybe I'm out of touch, but I don't think we're there yet to promote someone as a main primetime anchor who is openly gay. Am I wrong?
There really isn't one, guys, right? Everybody says Anderson Cooper, but he doesn't talk about a partner or husband. He talks about his children, which is great. Don on CNN, I think, has fallen more into a commentator role at the network. I would say he does, but I think we all know, without naming names, there are one or two network anchors that are gay that are not out and have just decided to play it that way. But I think you're right. This is all new territory. And I go back to what that agent told me, which is, if you look across America in major markets, can you name 2 or 3 main primary out news anchors? Craig Stevens in Miami and Belkey's, and Craig would be the first to admit that he can't get arrested at another station, major market. There was Randy Price, I believe, in Boston. Can you guys think of anybody? There is one news anchor in Washington who is out in the newsroom but doesn't talk about it, and has never done press about it, and doesn't really read it. And so I don't think, to the public's in the view of the public, that there is a out gay primary anchor. I can't think of any. So I think it's new. And if a broadcasting company was interested in promoting that diversity, as you brought up, Bob, maybe we would couch it in a different way, but I think it would be exciting. And I was going to ask Drew or Sergio, are they doing anything with your morning show? Because your news anchor, Drew, right, is gay as well?
Yeah.
Are you all talk about it? It's all...
Oh yeah. If you've ever seen our morning show, when I got promoted to my current position on weekday morning, Reggie and I talked about it. I don't even know if we can think of another newscast in the country that has 2 open gay or anyone identifying as queer, 2 people on the desk together at the same time.
I can't either. The Miami Evening News, I think it was Craig Stevens and Belkey's co-anchors, both gay. But no, you are in a rare circle there of people who of shows that have.
And please believe I don't take it for granted, my position. And I do make a conscious effort, when it applies to a story or something, to talk about my life, talk about my husband, talk about, experiences I've been through as a gay man, because you just don't know who's watching. I just go back to when I was a kid, I didn't see any,
anybody living a fulfilled queer life. You know, it was always kind of those like, you know, coming up on our primetime special, Two Men Hug. And I was like, why is this a big deal? And that was as far as I went. I'm like, do gay men do other things? And is hugging like the ultimate thing you can do as a gay man? That's what I thought as a kid. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so aspirational. So I do want to, you know, show my life and how proud I am of what I do, and that you can be successful in a career, you know, and you can have these two things that maybe you didn't think you could have, you know, growing up. And I know Reggie makes the same effort to talk about his husband too. You just never know who's watching, and that could, you know, bring someone comfort who maybe isn't in a place in their life or in a setting where they get that representation, you know, on
what
a
you're
daily
doing
basis.
is you're bringing a credibility to being gay by being a good
Right.
meteorologist. And it's what Tony has said, and you and Sergio, is it's about, you've got to gain the trust. You've got to gain the credibility professionally. And then, you know, when you do talk about being gay or your husband or experiences of, you know, say adopting children or surrogacy, that it comes with this level of credibility that you have earned as a journalist.
Very well
Yeah,
said.
you're exactly right.
One of the things that's in I've worked with Drew. Now I work at a different television station, but besides the fact that Drew is my friend, and yes, I was there when he met his now husband, and yes, I was there when they got married. Drew is also a science geek, and I love that he's a science geek, and that's part of what he displays in his social media as well. One of the favorite exchanges that I will see every once in a while is between Drew and my weekend meteorologist, Rob Mayetta, who is also a science geek. And they go at it together, and they talk about the weather in the weirdest, most scientific way that I love. And that's just being authentic to who Drew is. I mean, like, I think the challenge for being able, if someone wanted to market me as a gay anchor, I'd be like, well, why? That's kind of a short marketing campaign. Like, I'm credible for a bunch of other different reasons, and that's one of them. Our job does not require us to be these flat characters on television. We have to be our authentic selves on television, presenting these stories and presenting the news. And I mean, I think that's just where we are now, and thank goodness for that.
Very good. And before we run out of time, there's one more thing I'd like you all to weigh in on real quick. The impact on your personal life. For me, there was no option to come out, and there was no option to get married until 2015. Luckily, I was able to do that at that time, but I had to wait till my 60s to do that. This generation, what would you say to them about being openly gay, having a personal life in television news?
I would say being openly gay has made me a better reporter and a better person and much happier. And I'm the same person all the time now. I'm not compartmentalized. And so I feel like my life has been authentic, and it's because I came out. Also made me less afraid about everything, including asking really tough questions of presidents on down. People have asked me over and over, you know, how could you ask George Bush if he was stupid, in so many words? And I really trace it back to being openly gay. I mean, you know, when you slay your dragons, it impacts every aspect of your life.
Very well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. I think when you are authentic in yourself, it just makes everything in your life better. Your work is better. Your personal life, you know, is amazing. But that also, I feel like it also just comes with growing older. When you get older, you know, when you leave your 20s, you go into your 30s, you just stop caring less about what people even think about you. I know when you're a teenager, especially now with, you know, just social media, you just want to be liked by as many people as possible, and you don't want anything to maybe disrupt that. But just know that some of this stuff just comes with getting older, and that you just really start to care less and less about what people think about you. You know, when you start out in your 20s, you're like, you get one bad email from a viewer and you think, oh, this is it, my life's over, you know. Now you get bombarded with how many, you know, a week, and you're like, I don't care. Like,
this is me. Take it, leave it. You got 9 million other options to choose from. I don't know why you want to watch me continually if you hate me. Like, that's a weird thing to do. But just know that, when you live authentically, it just, your whole life, it's everything from work to your personal life. It's just better because you are in a happier place.
And publicly, let me congratulate you on your wedding. Many, many decades of happiness. Lynn, let me talk about your situation. You're a happy man too.
I am. And just to touch on what Drew was just saying, just being feeling like a better person, I feel like you're a better friend too. Working in these newsrooms across the country, you become really close to people, and you talk on the phone all the time, you hang out, you go to the bars, you go to the movies, and they don't know this big thing about you. And are you really a true friend to these people if you don't share that aspect of your life? So yeah, I think now all the friendships that I've made now, I feel like they're even more genuine because I'm an open book now. And I'm a happy man. I'm a married man. And I think love will help you to open your eyes too, and just to walk through that door and just be with the help.
Well said.
Well said indeed. Okay, guys, wrap it up for me. Bill, what are your final thoughts?
Well, really quickly, I would say authenticity is really a cornerstone of our business, isn't it? So I think that many of us struggled when we had not come out, or we were only telling select people that we weren't living our authentic lives, and therefore in some way breaking one of the tenets of journalism, that we were not being authentic. And so I do feel strongly about that. But I also feel strongly that, it is not licensed not to be relatable to people who are not gay. When you're in a newsroom, it's a very different, hopefully very diverse environment. So don't come in with tunnel vision and just focused about you and the community that you want to advocate for in the newsroom when the time arises. It's being likable, getting along with people, being relatable. That's how we push it forward, people. That's where the network executives and the top management people say, yeah, I'm gonna hire this person, and I don't care that they're gay. They're great. They're credible. They're trustworthy. They're likable, and I think those are things that have really helped me throughout my life, and now in real estate as well.
Very good. And Tony, and how about your thoughts, real quick?
Well, we're seeing this in June. Everybody's gay in June. So if you want to come out, this is a good month to do it.
And when you do, we'll welcome you with open arms.
Makes perfect sense. And bring a friend along with you so they can really see our humanity up close. Any other final thoughts? Sergio?
What's fun about being a reporter in San Francisco is that you get to see all these really important historic spots that are seared into my memory. I didn't grow up in San Francisco, and yet I still, for some reason, I saw a news report when I was in elementary school, and I remember seeing then president of the board, Feinstein, just after the assassination of Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone. And then I started reporting, having to go to City Hall and walk those halls and recognize where I was, right? And Hank mentioned, the gay marriage. I covered the Proposition 8 trial. I did radio for a while when I got here, and I covered the entire thing from beginning to end. And then I started working for Channel 7 when it was overturned. And like a rush, the first the first pair to get married in San Francisco, I covered that. And then Attorney General Kamala Harris officiated that wedding. And then just a little while ago, I get to watch my friend Drew and my friend Joey get married on the same balcony where that historic wedding happened. Life's wonderful when you are who you are. And, it just gets easier. It gets more colorful. It gets more textured, and you get to experience all these wonderful things once you decide that you're just going to be you.
Very well said. Hank, you get the final word.
This is inspirational. I just, you've made me miss the news business, and you made me miss newsrooms. There was a famous golfer who used to say, if you're a golfer, you're a friend of mine. That's how I feel about news people. If you're a news person, you're a friend of mine. So thanks to all of you for carrying the torch.
Well said, and thank you all for doing this today. I think we have broken some ground, and I think we should do more of this. So I'll be calling. Don't forget to answer my call. But thank you all. It's been remarkable interaction with our LGBTQIA journalists. Thank you. Our Academy chapter, was proud to host this unique diversity learning opportunity. We do hope our openness and thought-provoking approach serves as a model for everyone brainstorming ways to better connect with their communities. Now, we have one more program we plan to record this summer before we take a break. Our next focus will enable a group of gifted Hispanic and Latino journalists to tell their stories and career experiences in broadcasting. We will record that in a few weeks and make it available to all 1,200 members of our chapter and to the public on YouTube in September, when we proudly celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. So be sure to check that out. Our diversity project was created to inform and educate about all the cultural experiences inside broadcasting, inside our profession, and provide a comfortable, safe space for opening ears, minds, and hearts about the depth of experiences with diversity and inclusion in every workplace. The focus is always on truth-telling. It's what we do and what people have come to trust about us for decades. We truly hope to make a difference with our diversity interactions by helping everyone be heard, understood, and included in critical decision-making that can open up new connections of public trust with our communities. Now be sure to check us out on our NATAS San Francisco and Northern California website or on YouTube. You certainly can see this and other programs we've done earlier in the year. If you have some thoughts to share, or you just want to offer me some ideas on how to take this to the next level, I want to hear from you. Please send me an email. I'd be happy to listen and learn from you. Looking ahead this fall, we hope to assemble a group of top-level executives to hear what they've learned from these diversity sessions, and then explore ideas on how they plan to move forward with the information. So keep an eye out on what we do next. In the meantime, happy Gay Pride Month to all the employees in every television market in this country. Your skills and abilities are appreciated and they are needed. And everyone watching, enjoy some time off this summer to relax and recharge. Broadcast professionals, we know that the Academy applauds us, and now we applaud you for your tireless efforts and the devotion to truth-telling as great champions of the First Amendment. We thank you all. Until we see you again, take good care.